Welcome back to today's Family Connection Point. Today we're in Matthew chapter 26, verses 17 through 29. And we're talking about remembering. And I have for our illustration my wedding album. And Stacy and I were married in Bermuda, and so there's all of our pictures. And when we look through this, we remember the day when we were young and when we got married, when we made a promise to one another to spend the rest of our lives together, to be faithful to one another. And we are so thankful for God's goodness in providing each other. And we love each other, obviously, but this helps us to remember that day where we made that promise. And today we're talking about another promise. We're talking about another thing that Christ tells us to remember. And he institutes something very, very special today. And it starts in our passage with the Passover meal. Jesus tells his disciples to go and prepare the Passover meal, to find a house. And they go into the house, and Jesus sits down, and he says something kind of crazy. He says, hey, one of you guys is going to betray me. One of you guys is going to betray me. And the disciples don't start accusing each other. They actually start saying, hey, God, is it going to be me? Is it me, Jesus? Is it me? And then Judas Iscariot, the one who would betray Jesus, the one who's already went and received payment for his betrayal, but he hasn't consummated it. He hasn't done the act. He's only made the preparations for it. He actually asked Jesus, he says, Rabbi, is it me? And Jesus actually says, hey, it's someone in close fellowship with me, someone who's actually sharing the bowl. And he turns to Judas and he says, yes, it is you. And now the disciples didn't understand what was going on. We actually see that in another passage in John. So they didn't hear it. They didn't understand what was going on. But Jesus then does something pretty sweet. He actually takes the Passover meal and he takes the unleavened bread, and he says, hey, this is a example or a picture of what I'm about to do for all of mankind. My body is about to be broken like this bread, and my blood is about to be poured out as a new promise, a new covenant, a new agreement that is given to all people that will believe in me, that if you will trust in my sacrifice, what's about to be done on your behalf, you will have forgiveness of sins. Now he kind of lays that out here in this passage, and he says, hey, this is a picture. This is something to remember. Later on in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, Paul says that this is something, this meal, this what we call the Lord's Supper or communion, should be something that takes place continually, often, until we see Jesus again. So this is a reminder. And so what we want to help our children to remember here is that we want to be thinking about the crucifixion. We want to be thinking about the cross. We want to be thinking about the resurrection. Sometimes when we think about the cross and the resurrection, we think about, hey, that's a salvation thing. When I got saved, that's when I thought about the cross. But what Jesus says is, no, this should be something that's brought to the forefront of your mind. In fact, throughout the New Testament, Jesus points to the cross as our example. He says, you should forgive as you have been forgiven. You should be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as Christ has forgiven you. He says, husbands, you are to love your wife like Christ loves the church. He talks about humility, and when he talks about being humble, he says, look at the cross. Look at how God humbled himself, took on flesh, and even to the point of the cross. You see, the cross is central to our faith, not just for salvation. And what Jesus wants us to do is bring it back in front and to remember. Throughout the Old Testament, God had instituted festivals and holidays, and even sometimes monuments of stone that would be a reminder to the Jews of his faithfulness. And why do we need reminders? Because we have a tendency to forget. And so what we want to do, just like this wedding album here for us, is a reminder of the promise that I made to Stacy a lot of years ago, we want to look at the passage like this and we want to say, hey, we want to bring this in front of us. And so we do that through communion. We want to talk about the death, burial, and resurrection. And so the reminder that we have today is to remember what Christ has done for us. I hope that's helpful for you. I'll see you tomorrow.